Ancient Fishing Techniques, Part 2. Have you watched the first part of this series? In that episode, we recreated ancient fishing techniques using realistic 3D animation because many fishing enthusiasts enjoy seeing prehistoric life as close to reality as possible. This time, we decided to do something different. We brought the story back in our classic stickman style. Now it's your turn. Which version do you enjoy more? The realistic 3D animation or the classic stickman animation? Tell us in the comments below, because your answer will help shape future episodes. All right, let's begin. By the end of the previous episode, ancient humans had already learned how to trap fish using stone weirs, woven baskets, and simple wooden barriers. It seemed like they had finally solved one of the greatest challenges of survival. But nature had one more surprise waiting for them. One morning, the traps were almost empty. Not because the fish had disappeared forever. They had simply moved somewhere humans couldn't reach. And that single problem forced prehistoric people to invent one of the greatest technologies in human history. Not the wheel, not metal. The boat. Imagine standing beside a river nearly 10,000 years ago. Your family is hungry. Yesterday, this river was overflowing with fish. Today, only silence. You could sit there and hope tomorrow would be better. Or you could chase the fish. That simple decision changed human history forever. Imagine standing beside a river thousands of years ago. Your family is hungry. Yesterday, this river was overflowing with fish. Today, almost nothing. Most people would simply wait. Ancient humans didn't. Instead, they asked a different question. Where did the fish go? That single question led to one of the greatest discoveries in prehistoric fishing. People began following the river instead of standing beside it. Day after day, they carefully watched the water. Something unusual became obvious. The biggest fish almost never stayed in shallow water. They preferred deeper channels where the current was slower and the water remained cooler. Whenever the seasons changed, the fish changed their routes as well. Ancient humans finally realized something remarkable. Fish weren't disappearing. They were migrating. Today we call this fish migration. Species like salmon travel hundreds, sometimes even thousands of kilometers during their lives to reach the perfect place to spawn. Ancient people had no maps, no satellites, no scientific equipment. Yet they learned to predict these migrations simply by observing nature. They watched the birds. They watched the changing water level. They watched the direction of the current. Even the blooming of certain plants became a natural calendar. When those signs appeared, they knew the fish were coming. Observation became their greatest technology. But there was still one enormous problem. Humans could see the fish, yet they still couldn't reach them. The deepest part of the river was far beyond throwing distance. Swimming after them wasn't an option. Strong currents, hidden rocks, and dangerous predators made that almost impossible. They needed something that could carry them across the water. Surprisingly, the answer had been floating past them for thousands of years. Trees. After storms, enormous tree trunks drifted downstream without sinking. That simple observation sparked a revolutionary idea. If a tree could float, maybe a human could float with it. At first, people probably held on to floating logs while crossing rivers. But soon, they wanted something better. Instead of burning an entire fallen tree for firewood, they carefully burned only the center. Once the wood turned into charcoal, they scraped it away using sharp stone tools. Then they burned it again and scraped again. This slow process continued for days, sometimes even weeks. Little by little, The heavy tree transformed into a hollow vessel. Without realizing it, ancient humans had just built one of the world's first dugout canoes. It looked simple, but its impact on human history was enormous. For the first time, people were no longer prisoners of the shoreline. The river stopped being an obstacle. It became a road, and every paddle stroke carried humanity toward an entirely new future. They floated farther downstream than anyone had ever walked. The canoe changed everything. For the first time in human history, people could quietly approach fish instead of waiting for fish to come to them. And something unexpected happened. The deeper they traveled, the larger the fish became. Small river fish were no longer the only prize. Huge catfish, massive carp, and other large freshwater species suddenly became possible to catch. But getting close to the fish solved only half of the problem. Now they needed a way to keep the fish from escaping. Throwing a spear from a moving canoe was incredibly difficult. Even skilled hunters missed more often than they succeeded. There had to be a better solution. The answer came from something surprisingly ordinary: animal bones. Whenever hunters butchered deer, wild goats, or mammoths, sharp curved bones were often left behind. Most people saw waste. Ancient inventors saw opportunity. One day, someone noticed that a naturally curved bone looked remarkably similar to the claw of an eagle. And one thing was obvious: once an eagle grabbed its prey, escape was almost impossible. That same idea inspired one of humanity's greatest inventions, the fish hook. Using sharp stones, they carefully carved small hooks from animal bones. Tiny grooves were cut near the top so a fishing line could be tied securely. The line itself wasn't made from nylon. It came from nature: animal tendons, plant fibers, tree bark, even twisted grasses. Simple, yet incredibly strong. For the first time, humans no longer had to chase every fish. Now, the fish came to them. But ancient fishermen soon discovered another challenge. Fish couldn't always see the bait, especially after sunset. Then nature revealed another secret. One evening, while sitting beside a campfire near the riverbank, people noticed insects flying toward the flames. Moments later, fish gathered beneath the insects. The light wasn't attracting the fish directly. It was attracting the insects. And the insects attracted hungry fish. It was an entire food chain unfolding right before their eyes. The next night, they carried burning torches onto their canoes. The glowing reflections danced across the water. Soon, fish began appearing beneath the light. Instead of searching blindly through the darkness, ancient fishermen had learned to bring the fish closer, using nothing more than fire. Thousands of years later, many traditional fishing communities around the world still use this same principle. Sometimes, the oldest ideas never become outdated. Ancient fishermen didn't stop experimenting. Every successful catch taught them something new. Every failed attempt taught them even more. Eventually, someone had a surprisingly simple idea. What if one hook wasn't enough? Instead of tying a single bone hook to a fishing line, they attached several. Each hook hung at a different depth beneath the water. Some floated close to the surface. Others drifted through the middle. A few rested near the riverbed. Suddenly, one fishing line could catch several fish at once. Without realizing it, ancient humans had invented one of the earliest forms of multi-hook fishing. Efficiency had just taken another giant leap forward. But perhaps their greatest discovery wasn't a tool at all. It was timing. They noticed that rivers behaved differently throughout the year. Sometimes they seemed empty. Then, almost overnight, they exploded with life. Fish appeared everywhere. Why? Today we know the answer. Many species migrate according to water temperature, rainfall, daylight, and breeding cycle. Ancient people didn't know the science, but they knew the pattern. Certain birds always arrived first. Specific flowers bloomed only a few days before the fish returned. The river itself became a living calendar. Nature was giving them clues, and those who paid attention rarely went hungry. Soon, fishing became more than hunting. It became knowledge. Parents taught children where to stand, when to fish, which bait worked best, which river bends always held the biggest fish, and which seasons were too dangerous to paddle. Knowledge became just as valuable as food. Then, human curiosity pushed even farther. One day the river widened, the current slowed, the water gradually changed. Fresh water mixed with salt. Ahead, the horizon stretched farther than anyone had ever seen. The ocean, to ancient humans, it must have looked endless, beautiful, mysterious, and terrifying. Most people probably stayed on the shore, but not everyone. Someone picked up a paddle, looked toward the waves, and kept going. That single decision opened an entirely new world. Near the coastline, enormous schools of fish moved beneath the surface like living rivers. Thousands, sometimes millions, swimming together in perfect synchronization. Seabirds circled overhead. Dolphins chased the schools from below. Ancient fishermen quickly realized something incredible. If they watched the birds, they could often find the fish. If dolphins suddenly gathered, fish were usually nearby. Instead of searching blindly, they began reading nature itself. The ocean became their map. Every bird, every ripple, every movement on the water carried information, long before sonar, long before GPS. Nature was already showing them exactly where to look. Then something even more surprising happened. Fishing stopped being just a way to survive. It began changing entire human societies. Families no longer had to move every few days searching for food. Rivers, lakes, and coastlines became permanent homes. People started building larger camps near reliable fishing grounds. Children grew up learning the best places to fish from their parents. Knowledge was no longer lost with each generation. It was passed on, then improved, generation after generation. Soon every community developed its own fishing techniques. Some became experts at building fish traps. Others perfected bone hooks. Some mastered canoes. Others became incredibly skilled at reading tides and currents. Without realizing it, ancient humans were creating the first fishing specialists, and that changed everything. Because specialization leads to cooperation. One person carved hooks, another built canoes, someone gathered bait, others paddled. The strongest pulled in the catch. Fishing was no longer the work of one person. It had become teamwork. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of ancient fish hooks made from bone, shell, antler, and even wood across Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas. Some are over 20,000 years old. Others are so carefully crafted that they still resemble modern fishing hooks. Scientists have also found ancient dugout canoes dating back thousands of years, proving that prehistoric people were already traveling across rivers and lakes, long before metal tools existed. Perhaps the most remarkable discovery isn't the hooks or the boats. It's the mindset. Ancient humans never stopped asking questions. Why do the fish disappear? Why do birds gather here? Why does this tree float? Every answer created another invention, and every invention brought humanity one step closer to mastering the water. Today we use carbon fiber fishing rods, GPS sonar, electric reels, and fish finders. But every one of those technologies can trace its history back to a simple observation made by someone standing beside a river thousands of years ago. The greatest tool ancient fishermen ever possessed wasn't a hook or a canoe. It was curiosity. Curiosity taught them to watch, to experiment, to fail, and then try again. Without that curiosity, modern fishing might never have existed. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten history of ancient fishing, make sure to subscribe, because this is only the beginning. In the next episode, we'll explore even more incredible prehistoric fishing inventions that allowed humans to catch massive fish, survive dangerous oceans, and eventually become the greatest fishermen the world had ever seen. Until then, keep exploring history, because the past is far more fascinating than most people realize.